Talk Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
So it is Ireland against France in tomorrow's Under-20 Rugby World Cup final in Cape Town. It is a 6 o'clock kickoff there. Rúaidhrí O'Connor is in Cape Town. Good evening, Rory.
Hello, Nathan.
You would like to spend tomorrow, I imagine, talking about what could be a historic occasion for Irish rugby. I fear you may end up spending most of your day talking about Jonathan Sexton, because he's been in facing his misconduct hearing since 9 o'clock this morning, and no white smoke so far.
Yeah, I wouldn't guarantee there'll be white smoke tomorrow either. I get the sense that this 3-man judicial committee are going to take their time, that they want to assess all the evidence that they've heard today. We're still waiting on the kind of a missive from EPCR to kind of explain what's happened today and how long things are going to take or where it kind of all stands. But the word on the street is that it's certainly not going to be today. We're going to hear whether Johnny Sexton's been hit with a ban, and from the sounds I'm hearing, it may take a little bit longer as well, which is kind of crazy. It doesn't.
Why would it take so long?
Well, look, if it means that they're being as thorough as possible, then you have to take them at their face value on that. But Johnny Sexton been waiting on this for nearly 2 months now. I mean, the game took place. The incidents we're talking about, the kind of post-match exchanges with the referees that are at the heart of this hearing, took place on the 20th of May. I mean, how long ago does Leinster La Rochelle feel? It's almost the start of a new season. It's dragged on. There was a little bit of time where people were off. Then there was kind of a thorough fact-finding mission. Sexton, I think, was asked to write. They received a letter of misconduct, and he wrote to EPCR. Leinster had to fight their case as well because they have a case to answer. But it's just dragged on for so long, and I find it hard to understand what they're actually talking about all day. Like, how, if it's 2 interactions between Sexton and the match officials on the day, and I guess it's a question of whether there was adequate video evidence, whether there's audio recordings of what was said or what was perceived to be said. Is it a he said kind of thing? It's baffling to me in some degrees, not being in that room. I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I think it'd be as popular a viewing experience as the PAC committees this week, but maybe we'll get the written judgment in time and understand what's going on. But look, there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake for Jonathan Sexton. He's going to retire after this World Cup. There's a fear, I think, that the longer it goes on and the longer it takes, the more serious it's being perceived, and certainly there's a worry out there that there could be something quite impactful coming, and that's, I guess, what's always going to be the case when you're in the hands of 2 senior counsels and another official. So look, or King's counsels and another official. So look, we don't know. We're speculating just now. But what
is there any precedent, Rory, for this? And you were in studio, myself and yourself, the night that the charge was made, and we were talking about the length of time it had taken even to get to that stage, and we're a couple of weeks further on now. Is there any precedent when you look at previous cases with the EPCR where there has been this length of time, where there's been a case, as you said, it's 2 charges, and as we said at the time, I think it'd be hypocritical for us to say that Sexton shouldn't face some sanction if he has gone over the top against a match official. But from the outside, this seems rather straightforward. How has it taken so long to get to this stage? And then when it comes to the actual misconduct hearing, how are we taking at least 1 day and possibly into a second day to come to a decision?
And possibly a weekend as well. Look, I don't remember, I stand to be corrected, but I don't remember a case that's taken this long and being this drawn out for something that, while serious, is not... it's
is there any possibility there's something going on here that we don't know about? Is it more serious than...
Not that I'm aware of. Right. No. The charges are the charge, and the charges relate to 2 exchanges, as I understand it, between Jonathan Sexton and the match officials in the aftermath of the game. So it's a matter of what he said, whether he said what he's been accused of saying, what evidence is there supported. As I understand it, there was nothing in the referee's report around it. I'm sure the RFU's defence of that will centre around that to some degree as well. So look, it's up in the air, but you're right. There's no precedent, as I understand it, for something taking this long. it's an unusual case as it is. There are cases. Look, Dylan Hartley missed the Lions tour because of something he said to Wayne Barnes in a Premiership final that was dealt with quite quickly. There was a case earlier in the season involving abuse of match officials. I think there was physical contact involved in that. There's no suggestion of in this case that is the case as well. So, it's up in the air, I guess.
And you were up in the air yourself rather quickly after Ireland's semi-final victory over South Africa. You weren't expecting this trip to Cape Town, but here we all are. So first time since 2016 Ireland have found themselves in a final. That team were beaten by England 45-21. It featured the like of Jacob Stockdale, Hugo Keenan, Andrew Porter, James Ryan, Max Deegan. This Irish side, we've discussed it over the past couple of weeks, what they've had to go through off the pitch and the terrible tragedies surrounding this squad. Their performances on the pitch, was this level expected from this group of players?
I think so, Nathan. They are the Grand Slam champions. What we've seen in this tournament is that the best teams in the tournament are from Europe. So they've already played England and France, who played each other in a semi-final the other day. South Africa gave them a good game in the semi-final, but weren't as good as them. And New Zealand were way off France in the pool stages. So they came over here with a weight of expectation on their shoulders. They have a size that Irish under-20 teams don't ordinarily have, an ability to carry themselves into win collisions, win contacts that Irish under-20 teams up front have not necessarily had over the years. And every couple of years there's a crop of players who are able to put together kind of something special. Like Ireland have won, I think it's 3 out of 4 of the last Grand Slams, and the other one was called off. So they've been very good at consistent at this level, at Six Nations level, but at World Cups they've often fallen short. But this one was earmarked as a team that could achieve something. Doing it the way they have, given the circumstances, has been all the more impressive. But they are delivering on the potential that I think everyone knew was there. They're up against a very, very good French team who they only beat narrowly in the Six Nations tomorrow. So there's no guarantee that they'll be crowned world champions. In the heel of the hunt down the line, it's really about how many of them become senior professionals and play for Ireland and all of that. But right now for them, it's just such a big focus. Yeah,
listen, it's obviously a totally different group from 2016, but there's probably lessons to be learned from that final as well, where I think the game was pretty much over by half time. It's a final now. It's not necessarily about performance, it's about hanging on in there.
Yeah, I think so. But I think they are quite performance focused, whatever that means. I think they are a team that will, even as they negotiated their way through the tricky bits off the pitch, the tragedies that they've dealt with, I think they've fallen back into training, back into matches. They found comfort in that performance element of things, and they are very high-performing athletes who are part of a very highly functioning system. So I don't think they have managed to get through games where the games have gone against them, particularly at semi-final. South Africa had the ball for most of that first half, and yet Ireland came out on top at half time. That wasn't necessarily that they weren't performing, but they found a way to perform without the ball. I do think that they can't white knuckle their way through this final. They need to show up. They need to get it right. I think if they get it wrong against this France team, they'll be beaten. Just as if this France team get it wrong tomorrow night, Ireland will win. They have to show up. They have to show up with everything they've got. They have to take their chances when the moment comes. They're not good enough. No one at this level will be good enough to kind of get through. They got to fire shots. They've got to be on it right away. But the fact that they've won that Grand Slam and they had that finale at home on national television against England a couple of months ago, that will stand to them. The fact that they've beaten France, that they've beaten the hosts on home soil, even the stuff they've been through off the pitch, obviously very serious and nothing to do with sport in so many ways, but will all just feed into the fact that they've become more resilient, that they've grown together as a team. Talking to them today, there's a bond there that's been forged across this last year that will stand to them as well. Look, France, I'm sure will be saying the same things over at their team hotel, but this is a pretty special Irish group, win or lose tomorrow, but I think that if they get it right, they can win.
Yeah, 11 games unbeaten for this Irish squad, back-to-back Grand Slams. France are unchanged. Ireland have made one change to their team.
They have Mangan has moved to the second row, and McNabney is back from his ban, comes into the back row, and I think that's kind of a reaction to the fact that France have Posolo Tuilagi, who I spoke about here the other day. It was just, he's got the name. He's a direct line of the Tuilagi family, who just keep producing quality rugby players. He's 149 kilos according to the official statistics, so he's a monster of a man, but he's not a traditional second row. He's in the second row, but you're not going to get him in the air. He's too heavy. Ireland, I think, are looking to move him around the pitch. They've picked essentially a back row in the second row to get another carrier into the game, to try and play a high-paced game, to negate what Tuilagi does, but also to exploit maybe the limitations around his game as an 18-year-old who's still growing into that giant body and still, trying to turn, I guess, a French strength into a weakness. So it's unfortunate on Irvine, who's played very well in the last couple of games, but they've got, Richie Murphy's made a fairly brave selection call. I think it'll be a 23-man game. They'll bring, a very, their bench has made an impact in all the games as well. They'll show some trust in that. But it's two very strong 15s. It's a very consistent Irish 15, even through the Six Nations. They've been quite lucky. Aaron Dundon, their scrum coach, was talking earlier about how they've been quite lucky with injuries thus far. They've been able to pick their best players largely through it. They've been able to bring Andrew Osborne, Jamie's younger brother, into the squad for this tournament, and he's been really impressive on the wing. And one of the big elements tomorrow is the fact that they played in a bog of a pitch at the start of this tournament after a really poor spell of weather here on the Western Cape. They're playing on the local professional football team's pitch in a place called Athlone, a suburb of Cape Town. It's I presume named after the Midlands town. It's the Athlone Stadium, but it's a nice stadium, quite similar to Thomond Park. But importantly, even though it's the third of 3 games on it tomorrow, the pitch is apparently very, very good. It's a soccer pitch. It's a pro soccer pitch. It's very strong. It will hold up, and also the weather is very good. So if they do want to play a high tempo game, they won't, the pitch will allow them to do that. Whereas early in the tournament, if they come across France and Parle a couple of weeks ago, they might have got bogged down into playing a game they really don't want to play, a real winter game of rugby. Whereas, they're used to playing on hard tracks. Most of their Six Nations was played on Astro, so that's being a factor in this tournament and slowing them down. So I do think there's a chance for them maybe to express themselves here. This is where they played South Africa. In the second half, we saw what they could do with ball in hand. Conditions are going to be better tomorrow night, and that's a positive for Ireland, I think.
What about the French then with ball in hand? Because a lot of the focus and nearly all the previews, we spent a lot of time talking about Posolo Tuilagi, and he will be a centre point of everybody's attention. But the rest of that French team, what can we expect?
He's an awesome player, but he's not alone. That they have an array of talents. They have a very big forward pack. Ireland are that small, but in that All Blacks game, their ball carriers coming around the corner caused it wasn't a vintage New Zealand crop this year, but it was still, New Zealand, and they're always strong at this level, and they were absolutely blown away. It was such an impressive performance, and they've been scoring a lot of points in every game of this tournament. They have threats out wide. They have a pack who can beat you up front. I think what Ireland will be hoping to do, they're very good halfbacks as well, but Ireland will be hoping to just, at least parity up front, maybe get them going backwards, cause them problems, but also stay very accurate, because France, they're cliches for a reason. You'd fall into the realm of cliche with any French team. If you give them a broken style of game, they'll thrive in that. They don't play as structured a game as Ireland. Even though this Ireland team play heads up like Andy Farrell's side, it's still within a structure, and they'll want to keep this game as structured as possible. France have very good maul. They dominated a lot of the forward stuff in Cork earlier in the year, and Ireland were probably a little bit lucky to come out of that Six Nations game with the win. But again, it showed the character that they had. Sam Prendergast scored a late penalty to win it, having they got a big lead in the first half, and France came back. They're a high quality team full of good players who, a lot of them have top 14 experience. There'll be no easy challenge. Tuilagi will get all the kind of attention, but they have quality players around them who will match what Ireland can do. Ireland had a very strong scrum in that game and were dominant, and their scrum's been really impressive. Dundon's been the coach there, and he's done really good work on them. Ronan Fox has come into the team. Paddy McCarthy shifted to loosehead. That suits him. He's a really excellent player. So I think they're very well matched, these two teams, and they have different strengths, but it should make for a very, very entertaining game.
You mentioned New Zealand there. Incredible that tomorrow they're playing in the 7th and 8th place playoff against Georgia.
Yeah, the Australia team that Ireland beat them, and there was a red card in that game, but Australia have played them twice before they came over here and broke even. It was 1-1 before they came over, so if it was a series they'd have won it 3-2. I do think this is, look, you can read too much into one year. Everyone's, 2 years' time, Ireland might not have a great under-20s team and might be down the pack, but there does seem to be, it almost confirms the sense that the Northern Hemisphere is very strong right now, that Ireland and France are leading the way. England had a very good team at this tournament as well, drew with Ireland. We haven't had this tournament for a couple of years. I do think COVID hit the Antipodean teams very, very hard because they're so far away from everywhere. They're playing Super Rugby against each other all the time now, with teams from the islands as well. It's not as, having the South Africans in that gene pool was able to harden those players up, and they learned an awful lot about themselves, and I think they're losing that. Even Rugby Championship last week, the games against Argentina and Australia were very, very soft, so it's hard to know where those Southern Hemisphere teams are and where those nations are right now, and it does feel like at the moment, probably 8 years on from all 4 Rugby Championship teams dominating the semi-finals at the World Cup in 2015, it does feel like the Northern Hemisphere is in the ascendancy going into this year's World Cup, and this under-20s tournament only just kind of backs that up a little bit.
The atmosphere around, and I'm sure it's a huge occasion for all the families as well, and it was listening to Alan Quinlan and Ronan O'Gara a few weeks ago talking about their parents and the bond that is there off the pitch, and how poignant it's been over the last couple of weeks, how difficult it has been considering all the tragedies. Is there a lot of Irish support there for the players tomorrow?
Yeah, even on my flight over this morning, there's still families making their way over to Cape Town to support their kids. And John Devine, the centre, was talking earlier today. His parents only made it out this week. They haven't been able to come out for the pool games, so he was kind of jealous of all of his fellow players, got over to celebrate with their families and even getting out for dinner with their families as they went through the tournament. So yeah, I haven't seen a lot of it. It's not like an Ireland senior men's tour where you would see the fans around. It's quite a small band of families that are here, but you can see it at every game, the noise they make. They've spoken a lot today about how they feel the support from back home as well. I think social media has been quite important to that. I think this team, because of what they've been through, have connected with a lot of people back home and the way they play. I don't think there'll be a massive Irish crowd in the stadium tomorrow, but the parents that are there will make a lot of noise, and the brothers and sisters and cousins and whoever's over there, and they'll kind of all surface around that time. But yeah, they'll have good backing, and I think the South Africans have kind of got on board with their story as well. It's it's resonated beyond Ireland, that this team's kind of the adversity that they've been through during the tournament.
Athlone, by the way, is named after the Earl of Athlone, which was created in 1692 by King William III for General Baron Van Reed in honour of the siege of Athlone. So there's a little... Very good. There's 20 words covered for your article for tomorrow for you, Rory.
That's my intro sorted. Just I've got an update for you.
Oh, here we go.
Nathan.
Live breaking.
There's no decisions. It's just confirming there's no decisions. And the decision will be communicated from the committee to Sexton and Leinster in the coming days. So there's no hard stop on this. So it's just confirming what we talked about earlier, that this is going to rumble on for a couple more days.
Your tone when we were talking about it earlier, it doesn't suggest that no news is good news necessarily.
I don't, it's hard to, you can read too much into it, but I know Ireland will be worried, and it's hanging over. They'll say it's not, and a couple of players were out launching the jersey yesterday, and they'll say that it's, Sexton's training well and all of that sort of stuff, but he has to be affected by this. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him. His family are being affected by this. It's quite personal as well. It's a misconduct charge. It's and look, if he is found to have overstepped the mark, I think he deserves a punishment for that, and he'll accept that. And I believe he has held his hands up and said that some of his conduct was too much. But I think to drag it out for this long, to me, just doesn't make any sense. Whatever about if they're taking the time that it needs to reach the right decision, fair enough. But I don't understand why what are we, 13th of July now? This happened on the 20th of May. It's taken too long, and it's unfair on him. I think the best case scenario now for Ireland probably is that he gets a 1 or 2 game ban, misses a couple of warm-up games and is back just in time for the last game against Samoa, and then can play full part in the World Cup. Because if the ban goes into the pool stages, then Andy Farrell has the decision to make. Can he take a player who's not available and risk it? I know he has Frawley, Crowley and Ross Byrne. He's got things he can do to try and have cover for that number 10 position, but you're impacting into the squad then.
There's no way he doesn't pick him.
No, there's not. No. Especially as long as it's not, you're not looking at, there is precedence that players have got 10-week bans for abuse of match officials. I'm not suggesting that's what he's going to get. Some have. I do think that's over the top. But if he was going to miss the entire pool stages, could you risk that? I see no way that Johnny Sexton doesn't go to the World Cup, if you know what I mean. I think that's a double negative, but he'll definitely go. But it's it's that sense of uncertainty that doesn't need to be going on at this late stage. You know, we're only a couple of weeks away from the first warm-up game. If he was going to get a ban, it should have happened a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, plenty more for us to talk about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the Irish players were out talking yesterday. Peter O'Mahony was one of them, and we're going to hear from him chatting with Aisling O'Reilly a little bit later in the show. Rory, great stuff. Enjoy the game tomorrow.
Thanks, Nathan.
Rúaidhrí O'Connor there from the Irish Independent, live from Cape Town ahead of that Under-20 World Cup final. And all our rugby and off the ball with Vodafone is with thanks to Vodafone, Ireland's most reliable mobile network and proud sponsor of the Irish rugby team.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.